on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 6:37 now on O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in this Thursday morning. Thanks for letting us be a part of your morning routine. A lot to get to. Coming up at 7:05, James Rosen on the mini summit there in San Francisco between Biden and Xi. 7:35, Vincent Vargas, former Border Patrol agent. 8:05, Miles Yu, also on that China summit. And then at 8:35, Byron York of Washington Examiner. I'm Larry O'Connor, and joining us now is Mark Krikorian. He's, of course, the executive director for Center for Immigration Studies. And quite a day yesterday on Capitol Hill, Mark. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, glad to be here.
I mean, we moved the ball a little bit down the field yesterday with FBI Director Wray at least conceding the fact that this border crisis over the last 3 years has turned every state into a border state. He said that every single one of the FBI field offices, all 56 of them, are now engaged in potential terror threats due to illegal crossings, gotaways, people who have come through this porous border on our the southern border with Mexico, who happen to be on the terror watch list, or for that matter, we don't even know if they're on the terror watch list or not, but they still mean us harm. I mean, that is something, at least he's conceded that. I think he's the first person working in the Biden administration that concedes that every state is now affected in a negative way by this.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you're seeing more and more people, whether it's Democratic mayor of New York or the FBI director, admitting the obvious. The thing is, the guy in charge of immigration, who is Alejandro Mayorkas, the Homeland Security Secretary, he still won't admit that there's anything wrong. In fact, he was even asked, what would you define as a bad day?
Right.
As far as the number of people at the border, which Obama's DHS secretary has publicly said years ago, not relatively recently, 1,000 arrests of illegal aliens at the border would be a bad day. Well, I'm not sure. I don't think they've ever been less than 1,000 a day under this administration. Mayorkas literally won't say that, won't admit it. It's all, the border's secure. It's all hunky-dory. It's like that Baghdad Bob guy during the invasion of Iraq.
Yeah.
Who was telling reporters, there are no American tanks in Baghdad, as one was literally driving behind him. So, so I don't know what we call him. Ali. Anyway, there's got to be some
Baghdad Alejandro. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You're right. He was also asked, if you could do anything differently over your 3 years, what would you do differently? And he said he couldn't come up with anything. anything.
Yeah. So, because I would admit that there was some flaw in the policy, and they just can't admit that.
Yeah, well, you use the word policy, and let's be clear. It's not like they're trying to secure the border and they're just, lacking resources or without a wall, they can't get it done, et cetera, et cetera. This is the policy, is it not? Their policy is to increase the flow and bring as many people in. Their only concern is that it doesn't look orderly when the TV cameras are turned on.
I mean, you're right. That's what they're worried about. But I don't think that their policy is to let in as many people. I think their policy is that any step that would interfere with people coming across the border is unacceptable. In other words, if nobody came, it's not like that would be a problem. The issue is stopping people who do want to come, because this administration, they do not believe that immigration law is legitimate, that stopping people who want to come here is morally unacceptable, is what they think. And so they cannot bring themselves morally to do the things that are necessary to stop people, illegal immigrants, from coming in the United States, and this is the result.
Our guest is Mark Krikorian, Center for Immigration Studies, and this, over the years as we've had these conversations, Mark, we discussed the economic impact, the strain on state budgets with regard to education and health services, the cultural issues with mass illegal immigration, the crime due to MS-13 and other gangs bringing their operations up into neighborhoods. But now, after the April 7th attacks, we're right back to where we were September 12th with regard to the very real national security threat. This is the whole reason why immigration and border control was put under the umbrella of Homeland Security. Before 9/11, wasn't it the Department of Treasury that handled this stuff?
No, it was Department of Justice. But
Justice.
the thing
Excuse
is,
me. Thank you.
we learned this lesson you're talking about in World War II, because before 1940, immigration was in the it was Department of Labor, I think, at that point. And so in 1940, they said, oh boy, this is potentially a threat of people coming in. We have to move this to a law enforcement agency. So this is a lesson we learned 80 years ago, and this administration is forgetting it already.
Well, what about the Republicans who are running for office right now in terms of how they can best explain the urgency of this crisis and move it forward? Because I think we've gone beyond just, build that wall and get Mexico to pay for it, haven't we?
We should have. The discussion, all the candidates in the debate last week were all talking about how the border was important, which is fine. That's a start. But the question is, what is their broader immigration vision? And unfortunately, too much of the Republican Party is still living in 2004, when George Bush said any worker who wants to come here who has somebody who can hire him should be let in. They just want it to be done in an orderly way at the border. I mean, this is Nikki Haley's take, is that there should be unlimited immigration determined by businesses. And it's just that, like the Biden administration, they want it to happen in a more orderly way so it doesn't look bad in the newspapers. So, look, we've made some advances in the discussion of immigration, but not enough, in my opinion. Too much of it is still mired in this idea of what I call legal good, illegal bad.
Yeah.
That if people only come through the ports of entry, well, then everything's fine. There's nothing to worry about.
Mark Krikorian, Executive Director for Center for Immigration Studies. I implore you, as always, to visit their incredibly rich and deep website to educate yourself. Everything that they have there is annotated and referenced with links so that you can really be informed on this issue on a factual level instead of merely an emotional level. Although if you're separating your emotions from our national security, you've got to rethink things anyway. Mark Krikorian, always great to have you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Larry.
It is 6:44, and it's officially November. That means it's time to start planning for all your holiday festivities.